Hi, everybody. My name is Aaron, and this is Kim, and we are with Fleetistics. And we are here today to talk to you about a pilot versus a SEP or an SEP. And Kim is going to explain the difference between the two and what goes into a SEP. Kim manages the SEP process for us with our larger customers. And so, Kim, start by introducing, what a SEP is and how that relates to what everybody's familiar with as far as like a pilot.
Absolutely. So the SEP, as we call it, and then we'll refer to it as we go further on, is our solution evaluation process. It's something that we do at Fleetistics. It's a more extensive pilot. So a pilot is really designed, it's a short-term testing period, and it's designed to prove basically that the product does what we say it's going to do. Typically, it's offered to smaller fleets that have fewer needs or pain points, and so they can get what they need out of a 2-week test pilot versus some of our enterprise clients, which this SEP solution is designed for. It's designed for larger fleets that have more complex needs that they have today, and also what might come up in the future as they grow and start utilizing the system more and more. The SEP is versus a pilot, which is typically a 2-week process, 10-day to 2-week, lesser vehicles involved in a pilot. A SEP is typically 60 to 75 days for the full maturity of the process to work. And it ensures basically that there's transparency on everything from installation to configuration and training and support. Mm-hmm. So SEP companies work closely with a staffed business analyst, myself, or one of the other team members to take them through the process. So we're there to kind of guide them and hold their hands through it. So essentially, pilot, smaller vehicle, SEP, more enterprise fleet that might have more needs to grow with.
Sure. So a pilot, I would say, is typically done, and we're working with owner operators, right? Mm-hmm. Or maybe family members, or just a business that's just outside of that stage of growth. And the SEP is the enterprise class guys. They're looking at investing lots of money, tying it into other systems that they have, doing integrations into other parts of their organization. So they need to be very sure about what they're starting with, and that SEP process essentially trains them, I'd like to say about 80% of the way in using a platform. It actually costs us in payroll and things north of $5,000 every time that we do this process. And that's not including hardware and subscription services and things like that. So it's a big investment on our part, but it's also an investment on the customer's part. But by the time we get to the end of the SEP process, like you said, everybody should be fully aware of what the opportunities are. And hopefully we've been able to resolve the issues identified by the customer. But in a pilot could actually run 24 hours. If there's like 1 or 2 objectives and all they need to do is see a vehicle on a map in their neighborhood or in their area of operation, that could be very short, but the SEP is that longer process. So tell us what goes into the different phases of a SEP and some of the actual things that go on in the SEP. And really, what is the customer committing to when they put their hand up and say, hey, look, this is the process that I want to go through to be sure that we're making the right investment?
Right. So, it's important to arm our prospects or clients with the tools and expertise to understand the data and how it can be used to change what their current processes are in order to drive the ROI. So in order to do that, it's not as much of a financial investment for a prospect or client up front, but it is a commitment.
Yeah, we have meetings.
Yes, because there are meetings. There is a process that we follow to kind of outline that for you. There's sort of 3 phases to it. So there's the initial, let's get the equipment out there. We're going to have our initial meeting to kind of talk about what the needs are and what the defining terms for ROI that they're looking for are going to be. And then we're going to go ahead and get that equipment out to them. So we meet in between while the devices are being shipped to the customer. And then once they're installed, we will meet again, but we'll just let the drivers do their normal everyday activity. We do this for approximately 2 weeks so that we can do this as a source to gather the baseline data. That baseline data is what we use to start with in order to formulate different rules to help make change in their current processes of how they're doing things in an effort to drive the ROI that has been a pain point for them. So once we are able to review that baseline data, we will sit down and have another meeting with our client prospect, and we will show them what we have identified as being some issue areas with some solutions as to how to take care of that. So once everything is agreed upon, the rules are kind of established, yes, we are in line with what their goals are, we'll go ahead and make some changes, whether that's in-cab alerts to the drivers, rules on the back end that are pulling safety data and reports, driving idle and fuel savings. So those are just some 3 really small topics. But once we are in agreement, we'll put that into effect for the next 2 to 3 weeks. And that way we have comparison data. So at the end of all of this, we can meet, for a final time as far as the SEP is concerned, and we can show them that baseline data versus all of the wonderful changes that have been made, where you can see your long-term, your short-term savings and ROI. And then we can walk them through. By this time, we already have an implementation plan in place with them. It's all part of our SEP process. We put together a project timeline for them. And if we do need to go out to 90 days, we do. We have some SEPs that have been as short as 45 and some that have been out to 90. It really just depends on what the needs of that client are.
So let me clarify, the initial time period is typically somewhere between 2 and 4 weeks. What we want to do is give the drivers enough time to return to their normal behaviors, right? Because everybody's going to modify their behavior upon installation of tracking and telematics technology, right? But people that are not corrected quickly return to whatever habits they have, right? And so for that first 2 to 4 weeks, we don't want to say anything to the drivers about what's going on unless it's a major safety violation and it just has to be addressed. So we then get to that 30-day period. You look at the data and you say, hey, Mr. Customer, what I'm seeing here is we've got opportunities in relation to what you want to resolve in this data here, here, and here. And then at that point, this is where the customer needs to get involved, right? Because they're the ones that are going to go out and talk to the drivers. You're going to do things like turn on the driver feedback buzzer so they can hear something when, if they harsh brake, they get a beep and they can very quickly start to associate that beep means I did something that I probably shouldn't have, right? And then the managers are then stepping in and saying, hey, look, I got this report today that says you were speeding, harsh driving, whatever those things are, you need to change that behavior. And then they stay on top of that for another 2 to 4 weeks, right?
Right. Absolutely. It's all about that coaching process. It's getting them involved as well as us. We can't be the driving force behind it. This has to be something where once the process is complete, they're comfortable with everything, they're in implementation, they're the ones holding the reins. We want them to have that independence. They don't have to rely on us for everything. They know their internal policies. They can put their own policies in place. We're there to give them introduction to employee guides, help them with sample policies to implement with their current culture and the way that they drive their safety goals in today's date. But the ultimate goal is to keep them independent and understanding, look, this works as long as we are using the coaching tools, as long as we are still putting our part into it. So that's where it takes a little bit more time.
Can you talk about coaching? I think there's 2 things that come to mind. One is the companies that we have seen fail in GPS tracking and telematics are the ones that won't enforce their own policies, right? A driver goes out and does something that he shouldn't have done. Oh my God, he's the best technician, but you're not willing to enforce something on that driver. That driver tells the next driver and tells the next driver, and all of a sudden you can't enforce anything because everybody has to be treated the same. So, enforcing your standards is key to long-term success. Number 2 is not involving every aspect of the organization. This isn't just about fleet, right? What are some of the other groups that should be involved in the SEP process, maybe in the later stages, not the entire time, but at some point they need to be engaged to understand what data is available and how it might impact their responsibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we have a lot of third-party providers that we work with, because we find out as we're doing the set process or moving forward down the road that their needs have changed and they're growing. So, risk management is one of those departments that, to be honest with you, I would suggest for prospects or clients to kind of get them involved earlier stages than later, because not just in fleet savings, fuel savings, there's a huge amount of data that can be taken advantage of from a risks perspective, and driving insurance rates down and driving safer driving behavior and keeping everybody on the road and the vehicles intact. Those are your two most expensive assets as a fleet company, are your employee and your vehicle. So that would be another department. As you move forward, you may find we find working with utility companies, for example, they've got their own ISRI mapping. So IT department needs to be involved. Also, from a safety standpoint and security of a network, it's important to let them know what you're looking at in a solution, so they are also going to be on board when you decide this is what you would like to get. They're going to come at you with a lot of different questions from their perspective of network safety and hacking and things along those lines. So you want to be sure that they're involved in this decision as well. So there are a lot, and that's just to touch on a couple of them. Sometimes we end up embedded in 6 or 7 different departments depending on what the needs are, but it makes it easier so everybody gets the information that they need.
So human resources, sales, operations, dispatch, customer service, risk, safety, maintenance. I mean, all of those departments have data available to them to help them better do their jobs. And when we talk about analytics and evaluating, we're looking at rolling cost per mile, unplanned downtime, productivity, stops per day, stop durations, productivity per hour, miles driven, and what that means as far as like productivity. So there's a lot that goes into that. And then you touched on, uncovering something. So if coaching is a big deal, like we've got a lot of really bad behavior, we've got partners that we can bring in that have coaching products that bolt on to some of the systems that we have. So we can have an introduction that addresses other problems, or we uncover, maybe there's a routing problem. Maybe the current system isn't effectively routing, or the dispatch center isn't effectively, understanding where everybody is and getting messages out to the drivers. We can bring others in for assistance as those things are uncovered during the set process. So let's move to the end of this process, which is, the SEP's been completed. We've agreed on the definition of success, and we've accomplished that. So now the customer knows I can get my minimum ROI based on the things that I've seen. Where do we go from there?
So essentially, yeah, we've just confirmed that they have met. We've been successful with that. We've also in the process trained personnel. We've set them up for successful implementation. They've got an implementation plan. So should they choose to decide, and moving forward, I would say 95% of the opportunities where we have gone through this process have become long-term clients of ours, because by the end of it, they are, like you said, 80% comfortable, ready, trained, and ready to go. So once this implementation is complete, then we're going to continue to work with them to provide support for not only the existing goals, but also introducing new ways of achieving their ROI year after year. And essentially making the solution future proof within their fleet. So they don't ever have to look in a different direction. They can just keep adding and maintaining those ROIs and growing it from there.
Okay. Well, I think that is a good place to end this particular segment. We will put links to 2 web pages. One is the SEP process, where we outline this in writing for you. And then the second one is introducing GPS tracking and telematics to your employees. So that's always a big question. And, we have another video on that, but we also have a web page, and we have a sample driver policy there that you can download, customize it, and make it your own. But it gives you a good starting point from a enterprise class customer and how they did things when they were looking at, or when they implemented GPS tracking. So Certainly appreciate your time and attention. If you enjoyed the videos, please hit that like button down there. Subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and we're going to be working to provide you with real practical information based on the data that can be collected from GPS tracking and telematics with between the two of us, we have over 40 years of experience in this business. So
Yeah.
time flies, right? So,
Makes you chuckle. You just aged us. Thanks.
well, that makes me what, 36? So
there you go.
all right. Well, thank you again, and we'll see you on the next video. Have a good day.